this over unless you've got a pressing question that can't wait until after, whatever, either way you guys want to do it, but I want y'all to be able to hear her story
Yes.
before you finish
Thank you.
your afternoon.
Yes, please.
So, good afternoon. My name is Rondell Davis, and I'm just so proud to be a part of this team, to be a resident of this county. Like Miss Meadows said, and nobody does it like Chesterfield. Absolutely. And so just thinking about the long road traveled, right? For me to even be here today with you in this moment, right? It's overwhelming for me. And I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude. Doesn't even seem like a big enough word, right? So I'm going to tell you how drug treatment court allowed me to recover, refocus, and rebuild my life, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of like what it was like before, during, and what it's like now, just a little bit, right? So before drug court, right, I was, it's a long list of adjectives I could use. I was broken, I was lost, I was shattered, I was insecure, I was isolated, I was trapped, right? My life was a hamster wheel, like a Groundhog's Day experience, the vicious cycle of doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And addiction had did a great job of ravaging my life for over 30 years. Right? And it was so much evidence of it right in front of me, but I couldn't see it. So the evidence was the broken relationships, because I manipulated, I lied, I took advantage of people that loved me the most. It was always some type of emergency going on in my life that I needed to be rescued from financially. Just constant neediness and couldn't take care of my own needs. Numerous felonies, 15 years incarceration total, in and out, in and out. The poster child for that recidivism printout that she just put out there, that's me. Numerous documented and undocumented overdoses. And once my life was spared, yet again, I did the same thing over and over. I remember wondering, am I insane? And then I would later learn that insanity was doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results because I couldn't see the truth. So by the time I reached the last house on the block, which is my nickname for drug treatment court, I was so beaten down by consequences and poor choices, I knew I was close to the end of the road, not rock bottom, because it seemed like my bottoms always had trap doors, because I was so deep in denial, and plus I had a network of people around me enabling me. So I found myself all alone. My family was done. By the time I got to drug court, my family was done. My mom looked straight through my soul. She was like, only God can help you. She threw up her hands. So here I am at the last house on the block, 50 years old, 117 pounds, 3 new felonies on top of the 11 previous convictions, and I'm given this opportunity. So while I'm detoxing at Riverside Regional Jail in this dark, smelly cell, the fog was lifted from me just long enough for me to get a glimpse of what my life really looked like. So now I can see what everybody else is seeing. And I do not like what I see. And I cringe at the chaos, the unmanageable, the complete mess that my life had become. And there was so much power in that moment, because it was then that I realized I need help. I surrender. So my surrender, and I'm sorry, forgive me. So my surrender actually made the program simpler. Not easy, but simpler, because I had made a decision that this is what I'm going to do. I followed directions. I was desperate. I was willing. I took suggestions. And my clinician, Mr. Bullock, he challenged me. We dug deep. We did the hard, uncomfortable work. I was vulnerable. And my biggest challenges, thank you, were coming up against, thank you, my own antiquated belief systems, distorted thinking patterns, and hardwired survival techniques. All of those things were keeping me stuck. And they were no longer serving me. So my clinician and I'm so grateful for him, it was like peeling back the layers of an onion, like a blooming onion, like the ones they have at Outback. Those big onions where. And so along with the individual sessions with my clinician, we also had group therapy. So in group therapy, I'm learning time management, money management, coping skills, problem-solving skills. There was an MRT workbook that helped look at my moral compass and how my addiction affects everything that's connected to me, indirectly and directly. And that was like a spiritual awakening, realizing how this was affecting my kids, society, my health, my work relationships, everything. It was like dominoes. Drug court was introducing me to me. I was growing, I was learning, I was being stretched, and I was being restored to sanity, because now I can really see the truth. So during a session with Mr. Bullock, and I don't have much longer, a very difficult session where we had processed some grief and loss, he said something to me. He said, "You're unstoppable." And I heard it. And I possessed it. And I took it literally. And I knew that I had the tools and support to accomplish any goal that I wanted to accomplish. So here we are today. So my clean date is July the 19th, 2019. I have 4 years, 7 months. And 2 days clean. I have a sponsor, a home group, and a whole network of truth tellers that hold one another accountable. My relationships, my sponsor asked me, "What do you want out of recovery?" I said, "I just want to be able to sleep at night." That's it. That's it. And I have been able to give my mom that gift, my grandmother that gift, my children that gift. My financial restitution, my court costs, my fines, my debts that were in collections, all of it is completely paid off. My credit score is in the 700s, never been there before. I'm a registered voter, had not even been interested in doing that before. All of that has helped me become a productive, responsible member of the community and society. And there's a twist to my story, which Ms. Meadows already told you. So when I learned that I was unstoppable, I set some goals for myself. I took a risk, did a lot of praying. So I completed my training and required hours for peer recovery specialists, which drug court supported me every step of the way. And this is after graduation. I'm no longer in the program. So once I became certified, I became registered with the Board of Counseling. And now I am the full-time registered certified peer recovery specialist for Chesterfield, Colonial Heights Drug Court. The same program that introduced me to me, helped me see the truth, and gave me the tools I needed to clean up all of that wreckage. What a gift. What a responsibility. What a baton I have been passed to help somebody else. This is important work. This is very important work. The face of substance use disorder, in my experience, in my day-to-day job, is getting younger and younger and younger. Judge Robbins was talking about closing out cases once or twice a week. I have a huge network. Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Smart Recovery, Recovery Dharma. My phone rings every day, and I'm hearing about somebody that I know that's gone. Every day. And so, like I said in the beginning, gratitude just doesn't seem like a big enough word. Thank you for your time.
So this is what we aim for when we do it right. I mean, we're trying to hold the people before us accountable. We're trying to engage them in services, address the issues that brought them before us, that led to the behaviors that brought them for us. And if we do it right, we can contribute to safe and secure community, healthy families, public safety, giving people their world back. So,
Supervisors, comments, please.
Rondell, thank you so much for your vulnerability and telling us your story. And for finding yourself and helping others find themselves as well.
Thank you.
You might have to pass that tissue box back around. I know it takes a lot to find yourself, and sometimes you don't like what you find, but to actually have the fortitude to move forward through that anyways and break down that wall that you've built up around you takes a lot. And then to share that with other people and help them to do the same thing, because they need to hear it from someone that can do it, because the people that
Yes.
they don't believe that it can be done. A lot of them. And
Yes.
if they don't see somebody that's done it,
Yes.
they don't believe whoever they are talking to. So having somebody that's been through it, walked a mile with them, and understands exactly where they're at and broke through the wall makes all the difference in the world. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Dr. Miller.
So, in the interest of full disclosure, I've spent the last 25 years as a drug treatment counselor.
Oh.
I am certified as a substance abuse counselor. My doctorate's in clinical psychology, so I'm also licensed as a professional counselor. A question for Judge Robbins in that, what do you contribute to being the change with regard to what feels like a spiraling out of control, for which I am not going to disagree? So I'm curious to know about that.
Not being a trained mental health professional, I'm a recovering lawyer, as I indicated earlier, which means I do everything half-baked. For everybody, it's a little bit different. One of the things that makes a veterans treatment docket work is just like a person who has looking at the front end of recovery needs to see somebody who's at the other end of it. Most veterans see military service as like skydiving. Either you've done it and you know what you're talking about, or you're just some idiot who thinks they do. And so they're not going to listen to somebody with anywhere near the attention as they would for somebody who's walked a mile in their shoes. And so I think part of the reason why this works is we try to bring that sort of thinking and that process to bear. But I think every participant, whether it's in a drug treatment court or whether it's in a veterans treatment docket, they certainly have commonalities and overlaps. But for everybody, it's kind of a little bit different. They sort of have to find their own motivation, and our job is to sort of assist them in getting a hold of that. One of my participants committed some behavior which, quite frankly, was utterly humiliating. If I had had to have a discussion with my adult daughter, having done the exact same thing, I would rather have crawled under the table and bashed myself into unconsciousness. And so for that individual, hitting bottom was being so humiliated by their own misconduct and having some desire to try to regain their own sense of worth in their circle, both their family and otherwise, that they were prepared to do just about anything to get there. But that only worked for that one individual. Everybody else has their own reasons. As we've heard, rock bottom has a trap door, and it does. And eventually people get to the point where they're exhausted. They're driven by external drivers. If recovery was just a matter of just say no, we would have done it already, right? And if you could confine your way to sobriety, there'd be one judge on the floor, not six. You can confine your way to abstinence, but abstinence is but one step on the path to sobriety. Recovery is hard. It's physically painful. It's extraordinarily time-consuming. For some folks, it's extraordinarily humiliating because you have this facade you present to the world that you have to punch through to get to the ugly life you've been living underneath. And so when a person finally gets to the point of the axle has fallen off the hamster wheel, they just can't keep all the balls in the air anymore, and they've reached a point where the better path is recovery, then you can start the hard work. Treatment dockets are designed to bring to bear both the carrots and the sticks. The carrot is you get your life back. I can't tell you the number of times when I used to do this work with juvenile drug court when we had that. Parents are like, I have my kid back. I said, happy to be of service. Welcome to Chesterfield. But I can't give you a singular answer for how it is that people finally get to the point where they turn the corner. For everybody, it's a different point on that spectrum of difficulty. And frankly, sometimes we don't find it.
Right. I was going to say that the question I'm asking is that everything that I'm able to tell is that we are, as a culture, have kind of spiraled out of control. And as I'm seeing it as a drug treatment counselor and as a professional, as a mental health professional, what I'm noticing is that there was a really interesting article this morning in the New York Times where they kind of give a monthly kind of summary of news. And they were talking about how suicide in England for years in the 1800s was occurring all the time. And then all of a sudden it kind of dropped and they couldn't figure out why. And what it had to do with was the fact that people lost having an ability to commit suicide because they didn't have access to gas any longer. And so they weren't putting their heads in ovens any longer. And therefore, suicide dropped precipitously. And their point is that access, and I've realized this is not something that we're able to do here
Right.
on the county level, but that access to guns has been a primary methodology for suicide, especially with veterans, because veterans die at an alarming rate of 19 veterans per day die by suicide. What this is all, for me, you kind of put your finger on it, which is shame. Shame is one of those feelings that is so uncomfortable that what ends up occurring is we just don't want to feel it because of what we've done. And so ultimately, drugs is a wonderful way of avoiding shame. However, it's an empty.
Right.
I mean, it just
It's a time-limited.
it doesn't work, and it's for a short period of time, and then we're off to the races again and again and again, and it becomes cyclical. Ms. Davis, you put your finger on it, which I thought was beautiful, is that the whole concept of surrendering isn't about giving up at all. It's about joining the winning side.
Absolutely.
And once you get that through, but I had a question for you. You pointed to it a couple of times, but you said a couple of times about knowing the truth. The word you said is there came a point was that you couldn't see the truth, and then there came a point where you were able to see the truth. So I'm curious to know, what's the truth?
Wow, that's awesome. So the truth is, I am not my experiences. I am not my past. I'm not what I have been through. Those things have shaped me and molded me, and I have overcame those things. And I do believe that a lot of things that I have gone through is to help somebody else. It's to be able to identify, it's to be able to be compassionate, and to be able to assist and guide other people to find their why, that you were talking about. I'm reminded of a tale where this young man was walking down the street and fell in a hole.
Exactly.
Yeah, he fell in a hole. And so a pastor walked by, and he looked down and he said, "What are you doing in that hole?" He was like, "I fell in the hole." And the pastor prayed for him, and he was like, "Okay." Gave him some scriptures, and he left. And so somebody else walked down the street who was a clinician. He was like, "What are you doing in that hole?" He was like, "I fell in the hole." And he gave him some homework assignments to do, and he left. And then it was a psychiatrist who walked by and was like, "What are you doing in that hole?" He was like, "I fell in the hole." And he wrote him some prescriptions, and then he left. Then a peer came by and saw him in the hole. And the peer jumped in the hole with him. And he was like, "Why did you jump in this hole? Now both of us are in this hole." And the peer said, "I've been in this hole. I know the way out."
That's right. That's right. I've heard a story very similar to that. We walked down, and actually it's not mine. I wish I could say, but the story is I walked down the street and I fell in a hole. got myself out of that hole. I walked down the street, and I walked around that hole.
Yes,
And finally, I figured it out. I walked
Yes.
down a different street.
yes,
And, and that becomes the process of learning, and we are
Absolutely.
not our mistakes, we're not our experiences. But the truth is, and this is what I have been working toward myself, is that the truth is that everyone we connect with, everyone, is sacred and worthy and luminous, sacred, worthy, and luminous beings. That the essence of who we are is love, and that our love is forgiving. And what I really connected with what you were saying is the word unstoppable. That ultimately it's about forgiving, taking that love of essence of who we are. And that essence is love. It's forgiving. Forgiving other people and forgiving ourselves. So thank you for all the work that you all are doing. It is truly sacred work. Any way we can support you, please. I look forward to being at the graduation. I asked
Oh,
Susan to put
good.
me on that list. One other thing I just want to kind of make a point on is that we keep forgetting that trauma, okay? what we're
Yes.
talking is that trauma is equal to aggression, okay? Is that we were the recipient of aggression, and that somehow that's our fault. And letting ourselves, forgiving ourselves, it wasn't our fault. So we can go on forever. We'll continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna take
Supervisor.
that with me.
Yeah, thank you. Supervisor Engel and then Carol, Supervisor Carol.
So, I was thinking about the hole analogy, and seems to me that when you're in the hole, what you really need is people to keep coming by and bringing you a little bit of dirt, so you could keep stepping up a little bit until you fill the hole, and then you know how to fill the hole for somebody else. And so,
Yes, I love that.
sounds like that's what happened. Is you had, if you bring all the dirt at one time, what are you gonna do? You're gonna bury the person, right? Can't do
Absolutely.
that. You gotta bring them a little bit at a time so they can keep
Collective.
stomping it down and coming up out until there's no more hole. And it sounds like that's what you've done, and you help other people to do.
Thank you, Supervisor.
you.
Supervisor Carol, are you there?
Mr. Allen, I don't think I could even begin to touch the quality of the comments
Yes, sir.
that y'all did. I absolutely appreciate everything that they've shared with us today, and certainly for sharing her story, and wish all of them the best success in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor
Thank
Carroll.
you.
And I just want to say, Ms. Davis, Ms. Meadows, and Judge Robbins, I thank each of you for being here today and for sharing your experience. And one thing you say is that you heard. And once you heard, the light triggered and change occurred. So we congratulate you, we thank you, and we appreciate all the great work you're doing. Ms. Meadows, understand you're retiring,
Yes, sir.
and we are going to miss you, but we thank you for the difference you made. You made a comment that Chesterfield does it well or better.
I'm very
And you're
proud.
part of that.
Thank you.
And so we thank you for what you've done and the difference you've made, and we will desperately miss you.
Thank you very
But
much.
come back and see us sometime
Oh, I will.
when you like. Thank you each again, and all the best to you. Blessings upon each of you in all your work and your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.